beer, world wars, and strong economy, words often associated with Germany. Its history is as complex as it is fascinating, full of glory, tragedy, and transformation. This is the entire history of Germany in just 10 minutes. Long before Germany was a nation, it was a wild frontier, dense forests, river valleys, and scattered tribes the Romans called Germani. Some tribes traded with Rome, others fought fiercely to resist it. In the year 9 AD, a Germanic chieftain named Arminius, who had been trained by the Romans, turned against them. In the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, his warriors ambushed and destroyed 3 Roman legions. This crushing defeat stopped Roman expansion into central Germany and became a foundational myth of German resistance and identity. For centuries afterward, the region remained divided, a patchwork of pagan tribes, loosely organized kingdoms, and local cultures with no unified state. But in the east, something was brewing. The Frankish kingdom was rising, and so was Christianity. In the year 800, Charlemagne, king of the Franks, was crowned emperor of the Romans by the Pope. This revival of the Roman title was more than ceremonial. It marked the beginning of an empire that sought to unite Christian Europe under one crown. But after Charlemagne's death, his vast Frankish empire didn't last. It was divided among his grandsons, and over time it fractured into distinct regions. The eastern portion, known as the East Frankish Kingdom, gradually evolved into what we now call the Holy Roman Empire. It wasn't wholly Roman, or really an empire, but it became a loose confederation of mostly German-speaking states. The emperor was elected by powerful princes, and authority was often more symbolic than real. The empire became a maze of independent duchies, bishoprics, and free cities, a political puzzle that lasted for over 1,000 years. Still, it produced towering medieval figures like Frederick Barbarossa or Charles IV, and it played a central role in European politics and identity. But by the 15th century, deep cracks were showing. Real power lay with local rulers. The emperor's influence had faded, and the authority of the church was beginning to unravel. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door in Wittenberg. He didn't intend to shatter Christendom, but that's exactly what happened. The Protestant Reformation spread like wildfire, challenging the authority of the Catholic Church and reshaping European faith and politics. Germany became ground zero for this spiritual earthquake. What followed was more than a century of tension, war, and fragmentation. The worst came with the 30 Years' War, a brutal pan-European conflict from 1618 to 1648 that began in the Holy Roman Empire. Germany was ravaged. Entire regions were depopulated. It ended with the Peace of Westphalia, which granted religious freedom, but left Germany politically shattered. And yet, amidst the chaos, cultural achievements flourished. Philosophy, music, and science all found strong roots here. As the Holy Roman Empire weakened, one German state rose above the rest: Prussia. With its capital in Berlin, Prussia became a disciplined, militarized, and highly efficient kingdom. Under King Frederick the Great in the 18th century, it defeated larger armies, expanded its territory, and earned respect across Europe. Frederick was a paradox, a military genius and a lover of the arts, a ruthless ruler and a philosopher king. Meanwhile, the Enlightenment began to spread, and Germany produced thinkers like Kant and Leibniz, musicians like Bach and Haydn, and writers like Goethe and Schiller. Though still fragmented, the German lands were becoming an intellectual and cultural powerhouse. Throughout the 19th century, a question loomed. Should the German people, scattered across dozens of kingdoms and principalities, form a single united nation? The man who made that dream a reality was Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia. Through masterful diplomacy and a series of calculated wars, first against Denmark, then Austria, and finally France, Bismarck rallied the German states under Prussian leadership. In 1871, after the victory in the Franco-Prussian War, Germany was officially unified. The proclamation was made in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, a moment rich in symbolism and pride. The new German Empire was born, modern, industrialized, and ambitious. It quickly became one of the strongest powers in Europe. Led by Kaiser Wilhelm I and later Wilhelm II, the empire invested heavily in infrastructure, science, and military strength. But under the surface, tensions were growing. Nationalism, militarism, and colonial ambitions created friction with other European powers. Germany had found unity, but also planted the seeds of future conflict. In 1914, the assassination of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand set off a chain reaction, but the fuse was lit in Berlin. Germany, seeking to expand its influence and test its growing power, encouraged Austria-Hungary to respond aggressively against Serbia, offering unconditional support, the so-called blank check. That pressure helped push Europe into World War I as alliances activated and armies mobilized. What followed were 4 years of trench warfare, poison gas, and staggering loss of life. By 1918, Germany was exhausted and defeated. The Kaiser abdicated and a fragile democratic government, the Weimar Republic, was declared. It was a time of hyperinflation, street fighting, and a shattered national psyche. Many Germans felt betrayed by the Treaty of Versailles, which imposed harsh reparations and blamed Germany for the war, sowing seeds of resentment that would later erupt again. The instability of the Weimar Republic became fertile ground for extremism. Amid economic collapse and mass unemployment after the Great Depression, one political movement rose above the rest: the National Socialist German Workers' Party, led by Adolf Hitler. In 1933, Hitler was appointed chancellor, but within months he had dismantled democracy, silenced the press, banned opposition parties, and established a totalitarian dictatorship. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, triggering World War II. Within 2 years, Nazi forces using Blitzkrieg strategy controlled much of Europe, from Norway to Greece. But the tide turned after defeats in the Soviet Union and North Africa. By 1945, Allied armies were closing in from both east and west. The war left over 60 million dead worldwide, including 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, carried out in ghettos, mass shootings, and industrial death camps. When Berlin finally fell in May 1945, the Third Reich collapsed in ruins. Germany was occupied by the Allies, its leaders put on trial in Nuremberg, and the country was carved into zones of control, setting the stage for the Cold War division that would follow. For the next 4 decades, Germany was the epicenter of the Cold War. West Germany, supported by the US and its allies, became a capitalist democracy, prosperous and stable. East Germany, backed by the Soviet Union, was a communist state, secretive, repressive, and economically stagnant. In 1961, the Berlin Wall was built, a concrete symbol of the Iron Curtain, but cracks were forming. By the late 1980s, protests erupted across East Germany, and on November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, a moment watched around the world. Just 1 year later, Germany was reunified. After decades of division, the nation was whole again. Today, Germany is one of the most stable, democratic, and prosperous countries on Earth. It leads the European Union, exports engineering and ideas across the globe, and actively remembers the darkest parts of its past. Memorials to Holocaust victims stand beside tech startups. Castles from the Middle Ages overlook solar farms. Germany is a nation that reinvented itself and continues to do so. from tribal rebellions to high-speed trains, from emperors to environmentalism, from Goethe to Kraftwerk. This was the story of Germany in just 10 minutes. Danke for watching.